Well folks, it's official. I'm joining the Tony C. Smith e-bike club. Look at this! So, the model that we've been sent is the DYU C6. I cannot wait to get this open. I'm so excited. And obviously I have a vlog that isn't really about e-bikes or reviews. It's normally about growing vegetables at my allotment. But this is related. I'm hoping this is going to solve an allotment problem I have. And that is because this isn't really a bike for me. I'm not much of a cyclist. I have a bike that I bought when I was about 18 years old. It's pretty worse for wear. So this is the first new bike that this household has seen in a decade. And the problem I'm hoping it's going to solve is getting Jess to the allotment. This is going to be a bike that's more for Jess than it is for me, but I really liked the look of this when I had a look at it. It's really competitively priced. It's sort of like a great introduction, sort of my first e-bike type thing. So I'm going to get it open, we're going to put it together, and then when it's a day that isn't a massive storm outside, we're going to take it for a little spin and see what we think. One thing you always hear people say on these kind of things is that it's really easy to put together, and I'm really surprised at how pre-assembled this is. I didn't know what to expect, this being my first ever e-bike. The back wheel's on, the front wheel is pumped up. I really was at least expecting to have to pump this stuff up. There's a few cable ties to go through just to release this. And you just kind of slide this wheel off, and then I'm going to be very sensible, sit down with a cup of tea and actually read the instructions. It's coming together, and I must say, so far so simple. It's all pretty good. Just putting the mudguard on. One thing I do really like is that pretty much everything is included. It doesn't really look like there's any kind of any kind of optional extras missing. I'm following a little YouTube guide that they've done. The instructions are kind of basic, but there's a really nice YouTube guide video that just has the little step-by-steps. So far, so simple. It comes with a little light as well. That's the next thing to put on. I am assuming / hoping this is powered by the battery. Very, very cool. I'm really impressed with it though. It's quite pretty. Everything is really shiny. You know, it sounds a bit silly, but I'm slightly impressed with it. I did say that the tyres were pumped up then, not quite. So I've just got to do this, and then it will be ready to try out on the road. I must say it all went together very simply, very easily. I'm quite impressed so far. I do wish I had a bigger bike pump though. With the bike assembled, all we had to do was wait a good week or so for it to stop raining, and then we could finally head out. Jess could instantly perfect that bike pose. But it was a really gorgeous evening, so we just went out for a nice gentle cycle to a beach near us, and I thought the best thing to do really would just be to let Jess have a go on the bike, and then when we get to the beach we'll ask her how she found it, and then afterwards I'll take it back home and we could talk a bit more about the technical specifications and that kind of stuff. It was a really gorgeous evening and quite a nice novel experience for us both having a cycle together. It's not something we do too often. We found this awesome bit by the beach where Jess could really get some speed up. This is me sprinting alongside her with the camera. And this is really cool, just using the throttle. And then eventually I plucked up the courage to take the camera on my bike and ride alongside her. But you'd see, even in the quite long grass there, Jess could get up a real hit of steam and go way faster than me.
We have cycled from home to the beach. It's about 2 miles. A relatively flat cycle, but it was very fun. I am not out of breath whatsoever, and I would do it again. My first impressions of the bike are that it was very, very fun. Much better than I was expecting it to be. Obviously I know of e-bikes and I've seen them around, but it was much faster than I thought and actually much easier to ride. Very comfortable, and I feel like it looks very nice as well. It's so fast. It's not scary fast, but it is faster than I was anticipating it to be. But it's very fun. It's very easy to use, so obviously if you feel like you're going too fast, you can slow it down. But it is very fun. It's very wind in the hair-esque. I would say that this is a good bike for beginners. I haven't cycled in I don't even know how long. Maybe like 6 or 7 years. I cycle whenever I go to the gym, but not like on a road bike. I haven't ridden a road bike in a very, very long time, and it was completely fine. It's very, very comfortable as well, and I feel like very steady. Once you get the seat sorted, I had it like all the way down here. Once you get the seat sorted, the center of gravity kind of sorts itself out because it's very heavy at the back. So it might take a little bit of fiddling on your first ride, but it was very nice. My favourite thing about the bike is the throttle, because if there's any slight hill or you want to get out at the road or anything like that, it just goes. You just you just lift your foot up and the throttle goes, and it's great. Yeah, that's my favourite thing about the bike. I think the bike looks great. I think it's very, very pretty. I know they do other models as well, but I love this one. It's also very, very comfortable. The seat, when I first sat on it, I was like, oh my gosh, the seat moves so much, but apparently it's just a suspension underneath, but it's very comfortable. But yeah, I'm very happy with the basket as well. This comes with it and it's so cute. My bag is huge, I've got all sorts in there, and it doesn't bounce out, like nothing flies out or anything like that, so I'm very happy with it. It's very nice.
Is there anything that surprised you about the bike?
The it makes sense because you're going quite fast, so it's very loud. It's very fun. You can lean on it accidentally. It's quite, but it's very fun.
And after that little ride, we could head back home. As I said at the start, this is more of a first impressions video rather than a full review. We don't actually have any hills in our town, so I couldn't give it a proper test, but I did just want to show you this. Jess figured out the cruise control on the way back. And look at me, furiously pedaling. And then look at Jess, not even having to move a muscle. Really good. Let's talk about some of the tech specs. Before I go into the technical details, I do just want to remind you this was sent to me by the company free of charge. No money was exchanged, they've not paid me for this video. They wanted an honest opinion. It's not a paid or sponsored video, like I say, but full disclosure, they did send it to me and they did want to see a preview as well. So they have seen this video ahead of time. They just wanted to make sure that if I had any issues, I raised it with them first instead of, slagging them off if it could be something that was simply fixed. But we've not had any issues. Jess has already done first impressions, but I do have to say, I think one of my favourite things about this bike is the fact that you wouldn't really know it as an e-bike to look at it. I think it's quite subtle. You can kind of see there's this battery pack at the back, but aside from that, it really does just look like a normal bike to my eyes. It is very, very heavy though. It comes in at around 30 kilograms, maybe a little bit more. It's not the battery itself. This is only about 3 kilograms that it adds to the bike. So it's not the battery, it's just that this is a solid steel frame. And as I've said, I'm no expert on bikes. I can't assess the quality of the welds or anything like that. But I have looked at some of the other reviews from paying customers and they do seem generally very positive for this bike in terms of its build quality. And to my kind of novice eye, I think it looks amazing. It all feels very, very well built. It's got a max load of 120 kilograms. It's got some really nice front and rear disc brakes. The gear operation is fantastic. It's just a 6-speed, so it's literally just 6. There's no the cog on the middle on the pedals. That is fixed, but you do have 6-speed at the back here, and that was more than adequate for yesterday. The one thing that we haven't really done with this is put it up a hill. I'm not sure how well it would cope up a hill, but we do not have any hills locally. I think one of my favorite things about this is that you get everything. So it's got a lot of optional extras already do come with this. You get the basket, you get a front light, you get the rear light. The rear light is battery powered, so that's just a normal battery, but the front light is kind of connected to the motor and the battery. You get some really nice mud guards. The only issue I had with the bike is that I installed the mud guard slightly incorrectly. So when we went for the first ride, it was rubbing a little bit, but I just had to loosen one screw and adjust it slightly. I was really intrigued to see how comfortable this thing was going to be to ride. I did have quite a few goes on it myself when we took it up to the beach, and I was really it was so comfortable. Now obviously this is it's a bit more of a ladies bike. It's designed for women. You've got the nice step through. It does come in black as well, and I do wonder, I think if this was in black, I wouldn't mind being seen riding it, The motor powering this is a 350 watt motor, so relatively powerful for an e-bike, and it's limited to 15 miles an hour, which in the UK is one of the requirements of road legality. Make sure to check wherever you are, wherever you're watching this video, that if you want to ride this on the road, it meets all the relevant rules and regulations. It boasts between a 40 and a 60 mile range on this thing. It's quite a chunky battery. It will go for quite a long time. The other good selling point for me, and something I love, is the removable battery feature. So you just kind of lift the seat up and you can lift lift the battery out, which is fantastic because it just makes it so much easier to store and charge. You know, if you want to store your bike outside in a shed or an outbuilding or something that's really secure, you can just take the battery out, charge it inside, and then when you want to go out the next morning, plug it straight back in. Of course, aside from all that, my one favourite feature is the one that Jess pointed out, which is the horn. It just really tickles me. It's absolutely fantastic, and I can imagine it would be quite alarming if you're going down the cycle track and there's someone in the way, or they've got a gaggle of dogs and they haven't seen you, or anything like that. I did want to cover off just some of my personal kind of pluses and minuses. A big plus for this thing is the price. This comes in at around 700, which I think for a bike of this quality is really good. It's kind of like a no frills bike. Like I said at the start, it's kind of like a beginner, you know, my first e-bike or something like that. So £700 isn't going to break the bank. It's quite cheap as good quality e-bikes go, but it's kind of no frills, you know. It does the job, it does what it needs to. It doesn't look too flashy or too like futuristic e-bike. It does what it says on the tin. The throttle works. If you've got pedal assist on, you will be able to keep up with just about anyone. Like I say, it is limited to 15 miles an hour with the pedal assist, but you can cycle faster than that, obviously, if you want to. One of the main negatives, though, is this weight. And what I did want to try out yesterday was I asked Jess to pedal for a while without any of the electrics and just see how it felt. You know, was it really heavy and sluggish? And actually, she said it was really comfortable. And like we established, Jess isn't a keen cyclist, you know, she's not super experienced or anything. So once this is moving, it's absolutely fine. But one thing I did want to mention, because of its weight, if you're trying to maneuver, for example, through an alleyway or through a garden filled with plants, it's quite difficult. You can't really, if you want to, you can't quite pick it up by the seat and scoot it round. I mean, you can, but I'm relatively strong, relatively young and fit. But if you're a, 70-year-old, then it does take a bit of moving. I found the easiest way is to actually grab the rack at the back, and then you can kind of swing it around a little bit. But if you're maybe a bit elderly or a bit frail, that is just something to bear in mind. You know, when we were manoeuvring it back into the house, it is quite heavy, and it can be a little tricky to move. Overall, really, really impressed with this bike, and as you saw yesterday, Jess was really pleased. I think this is going to get an awful lot of use in our household. The one final piece of constructive criticism I would have for DYU is on their instructions. I mentioned that they were quite basic. They do have a really good video guide for assembling it. That was absolutely fine. But what the instructions don't really have is much of an explanation about how the actual throttle works and controls. It's got a cruise control mode, which is a little tricky to engage. You basically have to pull the throttle maybe to 30 or 50%, however much you want, and then hold it there for what feels like a good kind of 5 seconds. And I found this out from watching someone else's YouTube video. But if you leave it there for 5 seconds and then release the throttle, it should power you forward. But Jess had a bit of trouble getting it to kind of engage. And the other thing is that the pedal assist, which is basically the standard kind of default mode, you just turn the electrics on and then you pedal, and the bike will kind of give you a little bit of a boost. It was a little bit tricky to get used to, but that control, once again, isn't really explained in the instructions. It doesn't say that as soon as you power on the electrics and start pedaling, you will be assisted. So if they could just add a little bit more of an explanation about how that cruise control on the throttle works and how the pedal assist actually works, I think that would be really, really good. But overall, like I say, absolutely over the moon to have this. Massive thank you to DYU for sending this in for first impressions. Massive thank you to all of my Chili Pepper Tier patrons and all of my patrons who support these videos. Those Chili Pepper Tier patrons are Tony, Bill, Pam, Louise, Mel, Michael, Denise, Socks in the Garden, Andrew, Sarah, Louise, Dorcasaur, Angela, Andre, and Brett. Hopefully, I'll see you again in the next one. And if anyone else is interested in sending an e-bike so that I can have a counterpart to Jess's, please do get in touch.